Okay, so this is the last of the videos for meiosis. In this one, we're going to go a little bit in more detail in terms of the meiosis that happens in humans. So we talked about at the first how meiosis, the reason for having meiosis is for those organisms that reproduce sexually, for them to be able to create cells that have half the number of chromosomes, so sex cells or haploid spores that they can use for reproduction. So those haploid cells will come together during fertilization in order to form the new diploid cell. And they'll offer genetic variation through the crossing over and random assortment. So it's a way of introducing new features into the species. So in us, meiosis happens in order to produce egg and sperm cells. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. If you look at the word spermatogenesis, genesis means to make or to create, and the first part is telling you what it's creating. So it's a process that creates or produces sperm. And this process, production of sperm, happens in the testes of the male. If you look at this diagram, this is in your book, the top part is showing spermatogenesis. And in us, we would start with, in a male in us, we would start with 46 chromosomes, and the end cells would have 23. But that's kind of hard to show. So in the examples, they're just using a representative animal cell that has 4 chromosomes to start with, and the 4 cells that are made would have 2, half the number of chromosomes, so that when it unites with an egg cell, then it would have a full complement in the end for a diploid organism. Okay, so in this particular case, the first meiotic division produces 2 cells that are haploid, but if you notice, each of them has still got the 2 sister copies of each chromosome. So in the second division, those sister copies are separated so that you end up with 2 chromosomes, 1 copy of each in, well, like 1 sister chromatid of each in the cells. And what it's not showing in this particular diagram is that there would be maybe bits of red on this chromosome or bits of red on this chromosome, so that all 4 would be unique. All 4 are different because of crossing over and random assortment. So in males, meiosis results in 4 haploid sperms, 4 haploid spermatid cells, which have to mature a little bit in order to develop into fully functional sperm. So we're going to learn in the next chapter that that particular part where they're maturing happens not in the testes itself, but in the little part that's around the testes, which is called the epididymis. Now, oogenesis. Genesis again means production or making of, and ooo is referring to ootids, which are egg cells. Okay, so oogenesis then means a production of egg cells, which happens in the ovaries of the female. Now, if we look at this one, it's pretty special. Okay, start off with 1 cell that has 4 chromosomes. We have the first meiotic division, and we end up with 2 cells. Oh, but look, this one is much bigger than this one. So because there's an unequal division of the cytoplasm, this bottom one is actually not going to be a functional cell. It's not going to be able to survive. When these 2 cells divide again, there's another unequal division. So we end up with only 1 cell in the end that would be functional, and the other 3 are too small, and we call them polar bodies. Okay, so the result of meiosis in the female is the production of 1 haploid ootid and 3 polar bodies. The polar bodies help in order to nourish and support the egg cell as it's going through. So this slide talks about a few more features of spermatogenesis and oogenesis in humans. Thanks, buddy. Okay, so spermatogenesis occurs year-round in humans, but in other organisms, it's probably it varies from species to species. So they may only have spermatogenesis during a certain portion of the year. The germline cells, the ones that are getting ready to undergo meiosis, undergo mitosis for life. So they will keep on dividing and making more of them so that they can undergo meiosis and produce sperm cells for the man's lifetime. So they can produce sperm cells until they die, basically. All 4 of the gametes produced have the potential to mature into fully functioning sperm cells. The 4 spermatids produced in the testes must mature in the epididymis, like we already said. And when we talk about maturing, these are the things that we mean happen. They lose their cytoplasm, they form a head, they grow a long flagellum, which is a tail-like structure, in order that they can swim to where they have to. Okay, so for locomotion. Human males produce approximately 1 billion sperm a day, and they do that every day from puberty until they die, basically. Now, oogenesis, on the other hand, the germline cells stop undergoing mitosis in the ovary before birth. So that means that we have a fixed number of eggs that are able to develop. In meiosis 1, cytoplasm is not evenly distributed, so we end up, like we showed in the diagram, with 1 oocyte and 1 polar body. The polar bodies help provide nourishment for the growing oocyte, which becomes the egg cell. So only 1 out of 4 possible egg cells, okay, becomes a viable sex cell. So only 1 out of the 4 will actually become a working egg cell. The other thing about meiosis, or in oogenesis, is meiosis 2 doesn't finish until the egg is fertilized. So basically, the only ones that will complete meiosis are the ones that actually get fertilized. So even though females will release an egg from the ovary every month, those eggs are stuck in a certain stage of meiosis, and they will never proceed through the rest of it unless they meet up with that sperm and they become fertilized, which would usually result in a baby. These are just some diagrams to kind of highlight what's happening. So this is showing in the male. So the germline cells can keep on undergoing mitosis, and then of those, the some of them every day will undergo meiosis in order to produce spermatids. The spermatids are going to mature in the epididymis to become fully functional spermatozoa. So for every one that starts undergoing meiosis, okay, for every one that starts undergoing meiosis, okay, we end up with 1, 2, so this would end up with 1, 2, 3, 4 spermatids. Okay, in the second division. So for every one that starts, we end up with 4 working sperm. Now that's provided there's no issue with environmental factors or other things that can cause damage to those sperm or damage to the testes. For egg cells, on the other hand, we have regular growth and differentiation of organs and tissues to get somatic cells. So this is from the zygote. So the egg and sperm come together and they're fertilized to form the zygote. It's going to undergo mitosis until we get all the somatic cells that are diploid in the organism. Some of those somatic cells are going to be the female germline, which are the cells in the ovary that produce the egg cells. Okay, they will keep on undergoing mitosis until we have a certain number of them, but that stops before the child is even born, before the girl is even born. Okay, they are going to start to undergo meiosis, and they are stuck in prophase, I believe, of meiosis until they reach puberty. When the egg cell, right, oocytes are stuck at prophase 1 from birth until puberty. Each month, one of them is going to proceed to metaphase 2, and it's released during ovulation. We're going to talk more about ovulation in the next chapter, but it will only ever complete meiosis if it becomes fertilized. So if this sperm is able to fertilize the egg, then meiosis will finish and the two sets of chromosomes will be united and forming the new nucleus in the organism. Okay, so meiosis only ever finishes if fertilization happens. So when you're a baby girl, your oocytes are stuck in prophase 1 of meiosis until you reach puberty, and then each month one of them is going to proceed to metaphase 2, and it'll either stay that way until it's voided out of your system, or it will keep going if it becomes fertilized. So for a little review of spermatogenesis and oogenesis, we're going to do the same thing as we did with mitosis and meiosis. I'm going to pretend that you guys are here and talking back to me. Okay, so both meiotic divisions happen every time to produce reproductive cells. So in other words, meiosis goes to completion. Which one does that happen in for humans? Spermatogenesis. I don't know what's up with that little block on my screen, but it won't go away. This one says both meiotic divisions only go to completion if fertilization happens, and that would be the case for oogenesis. Let's look at this one. Results in 4 haploid spermatids. Well, that must be spermatogenesis. Results in 1 haploid egg cell and 3 polar bodies. That would be the end of oogenesis. As equal cell division, or division of the cytoplasm, equal would mean this one. That's why we can have 4 viable sperm produced. Whereas in oogenesis, it's unequal, and that's why we end up with only 1 out of the 4 being a viable egg. Okay, germ cells stop undergoing mitosis before birth, and only a fixed number of cells can undergo meiosis. Yeah, you're right. Oogenesis. Whereas the other says germ cells can undergo mitosis until death. So we can keep producing cells that undergo meiosis. That would be spermatogenesis. Last one, 1 billion reproductive cells are produced each day. Oh, that would be spermatogenesis. 1 cell is released from the reproductive organ each month. Okay, and that would be for the female. Okay, oogenesis. Again, if you have any questions, please email or text me. I'll be glad to try and help you understand it a little more. Okay, and I don't think I have an animation. There might be an animation for this on the links from the class website, but please make sure you do watch those animations because they are very helpful. Thanks for watching.